Mahalo everyone for being here. And mahalo to you folks as an organization. Really every semester I have people in my class that are supported by you. So this is a great thing to be able to make this kind of connection and to be able to personally give you a mahalo for the kind of things you do to support education in our community and of course especially at Palamanui. Before I get into the talk, I want to tell you two amazing things that have happened at Palamanui just recently. And the first one is that we have just made an agreement with the state to form a 706-acre forest preserve, which begins right on the doorstep of our school and runs up then into probably the most important remnant of the lowland native Hawaiian dry forest in the state. And so this is huge for our campus to have this outdoor classroom, this outdoor laboratory. It's huge for our community to have this, which will be an oasis of green forever, a place for people to enjoy, to take part in the restoration of what's been lost there, the preservation of what's left. So this is a huge thing that's going on right now involving both the state, the owner of the land, and us as a campus who will really manage it and open it to the community to take part in the restoration of, as I say, what's been lost. The lowland dry forest is the most endangered ecosystem in the state of Hawaii and around the world. So this is very important, what's just happened there. And the second thing is that a construction project is nearing the end on our new culinary department, and you folks that used to come regularly to have lunch with us will be able to do that again fairly soon. Our culinary department will be delighted when I tell them your reaction to that news. So anyway, a big mahalo to you all. And now, to tell you about the subject of the speech and the title that I suggested, it is on being a woman warrior. And I'm going to develop that, of course, in this talk, but I want you to think about who are the most remarkable people you have met in your life. There are various categories that you can think of this in, but just overall, the most remarkable person you've ever met. That person, for me, is the subject of the book that some of you have here and that you can see on the back table there, and that has just been published, Trail to Redemption, Love and War in Vietnam. And it is the story of a woman warrior. And so when I thought about the title of On Being a Woman Warrior to all of you folks, it really struck me that there are many different kinds of women warriors. And I'm going to give you a few examples. But I really think of all of you in that sense also, in the sense that you are doing things for the community. You're doing things for education. You're doing things that are helping our particular campus, and of course those individuals that get helped by you. So certainly one more mahalo for all of that. What I would like to do is give you a demonstration of what goes on in my classes. So I will just consider you. You're just about the right size for a class here too. And the classes are very interactive, so I'm going to ask you to be interactive also. And you will be able to hear and see how this works. So the first thing that students hear when they either are in the class or in our asynchronous online classes is aloha. And the thing that comes after that is it's showtime. I'm pretty sure many of you are going to remember the 1979 award-winning movie All That Jazz about choreographer dancer Bob Fosse, and he had an addiction problem, but he was the top dancer in the US at that time. And in order to psych himself up to get ready to go out and perform, he would look in the mirror and say, "It's showtime." And so I would like you to repeat that. Now, I find it empowering and energizing to say that, and I say that at the beginning of all my classes. So after me, if you would repeat, it's showtime.
It's showtime.
One more time, it's showtime.
It's showtime.
Thank you. And then I follow that with, are you ready? And so I will ask you to answer in the plural, thinking of yourself as a team here. In response to my call, so this is call and respond, are you ready?
Yes, we are.
We are ready.
Okay, you're going to answer, yes, we are ready. Okay, one more time. Are you ready?
Yes, we are ready.
Are you ready to travel through time?
Yes, we are ready to travel through time.
Okay, one more time on that one. Are you ready to travel through time?
Yes, we are ready to travel through time.
Are you ready to travel through time and meet women warriors?
Yes, we are ready to travel through time and meet women warriors.
All right, so it's definitely showtime now. Following that sort of burst of energy there and that empowering and energizing series of phrases, we go to meditation. And so starting off a class with meditation is really an exercise in mindfulness, exercise in centering down, slowing down, really just stop for a while. So a few moments of meditation, sit up straight, close your eyes, slightly gaze down as you do, and just free your mind. Don't think about anything in particular, just breathe. Mahalo e ke akua, mahalo e ka paina, mahalo e ka poke ka hiko. Thanks to God, thanks to the land, and thanks to the ancient people, our guides, our hamakua, our ancestral spirits. So, now we have all come together in these particular exercises. It's time to take off on our journey. And the wonderful word in Hawaiian is huaka'i, or a journey of adventure, a quest. And so this is really a quest. And the quest is for Ike. Ike can mean knowledge, insight, vision. This is what we're after here. And what we're going to do, first of all, is examine a number of women warriors throughout history and see what differences there are in people who really can be considered women warriors. And this is all going to lead them to my telling you about my own particular experience in Vietnam with this most remarkable person, woman warrior herself. So, when you're thinking about the whole history of women warriors, you've really got to start back in Greek mythology with the Amazons. Stories of Greek mythology are of this race of women who were dominant over the men in their society, and they were the warriors also. Great stories of Hercules and his encounters with them. Theseus, so the great heroes of great Greek mythology had their battles with these famous women warriors. Whether or not they actually existed in reality, the name was born again in the 1500s when a group of conquistadores, Spanish conquistadores, who had taken part in the conquest of Mexico and the Aztecs, then went down to Peru, took part in the conquest of the Inca there, and then were told by some Indians that there was another city of gold over the mountains, that's the Andes Mountains, and if they would just go there, they would find it. Of course, they were trying to get rid of these Spaniards. At any rate, the conquistadores made a very difficult trek over the Andes Mountains, did not find any city of gold, and realized they could not get back to where they started from. And so they decided that upon finding this giant river, that they would make a boat and they would go down this river. They were sure it must go to the Atlantic Ocean, and they would be able to then flag a Spanish ship there and be saved. And so their adventure was that they became the first known people, white people especially, to go down the Amazon River. And their stories of what they encountered there, of civilizations along the river, which they would then raid for food mostly, they came upon a society of women. Again, women who dominated the men, who were the top of society and who were also the warriors and who fought against these conquistadores, the women, of course, protecting their home and their food supply. And so, because this brought to mind the stories of Greek mythology of these women warriors, they named those women and the river Las Amazonas, the Amazon. So that's how the Amazon River got its name. It goes all the way back to the Greek stories of these women warriors and then the warriors that the Spanish encountered on this epic journey down the Amazon. So, also back in history, the Vietnamese have a long tradition of women warriors. Three of the greatest heroes in Vietnamese history are women, the two Trung sisters and Lady Trio. Pretty much every town in Vietnam has streets named after them. They were famous in the fight against the Chinese, trying to dominate Vietnam. They would ride their war elephants into battle, inspired the armies on to victory. And so there's a long tradition of Vietnamese women warriors, and we will return to that when we get up to the 20th century here and meet the subject of this book. Joan of Arc, the end of the 100 Years' War between France and England. Joan hears voices as visions, is called to go out and lead the troops against the English. Here is a young peasant girl coming forth to say that she can save France. And in fact, after she finally convinces the French in power that she can do this, she does basically that. And she is a patron saint of France today. So a woman warrior on the field of battle met an unfortunate end when she's betrayed, captured, and burned at the stake. Her fame lives on. Now, one more major jump into the 1800s, the fight against slavery. Two black women that really qualify as women warriors. One of them, Sojourner Truth, her famous speech, Ain't I a Woman, in which she really details the kind of lower status that women had all the way into the 1800s, and especially black women and ex-slaves like her. Then there's Harriet Tubman, who was an Underground Railroad pretty much main conductor, saved more than 300 slaves by helping them escape to the north on what was called the Underground Railroad. So definitely two great candidates for women warriors there. Jumping into the 20th century, Helen Keller is one of my favorites. Here is the First Lady, blind and deaf, to get a bachelor's degree. How is it that someone with no sight, no hearing, can actually be the incredible force that she became around the world about showing people that no matter how seriously disabled someone might be, they still have a life to lead, they still have gifts to offer. And until just recently, there was a person in this community, she was in my class for a while, older Japanese lady, who, before she came to Hawaii after World War II, she got to see Helen Keller speak in Japan as a young girl. And she said that Helen Keller's speaking in Japan brought about a change in the way the Japanese treated their disabled people. Like so many places, including the US, disabled people being shunted away, frankly, frequently, I should say. And yet, Helen Keller showing what could be done. So here's a woman warrior of a very different kind. The point that I'm making here is that there are many kinds of women warriors. World War II times again, how about Anne Frank, the 13-year-old Jewish girl hiding away in Amsterdam with 7 other people in a cramped place while the Nazis are taking the Jews out and sending them off to death in the concentration camps. And she writes her diary. The diary of Anne Frank today still is one of the great works of world literature to really inspire you that no matter what kind of difficult situation you might be in, you're not in the same one that Anne Frank was in. And she eventually perished when someone betrayed them after 2 years of hiding, and they were taken off to the camps. right before the end of the war. But her words live on. And one of the things she wrote was that, isn't it wonderful that no one need wait a single moment before doing something to improve the world? No one need wait a single moment before doing something to improve the world. And that's what you folks are doing with your organization. So on into the 20th and 21st century, one of my favorites right now is Greta Thunberg, the Swedish girl who at 15 years old, she makes a hand-lettered sign that says in Swedish, school strike for climate. And she goes in front of the Swedish Parliament building, sits there in the cold rain with her sign. And the next day, another person comes and joins her. And the next day after that, more people come and join her. And before too long, she's got a worldwide organization of young kids coming out to march for climate. Again, someone who believes something so strongly, then acts on it in the face of opposition, in the face of difficulties, and gains that kind of success. Jane Goodall, also as a very young woman, goes to live in the African jungle with the chimpanzees and learns things about them that have never been learned before. It goes on to a career, still is doing it, of doing great things for nature. You can think of somebody else that has some roots here in Hawaii, Maxine Hung Kingston. She wrote the book, The Woman Warrior, actually on Lanai when she was teaching at Leeward Community College on Oahu. She and her husband went to Lanai on vacation. They were going to go to the movie. As so often happened in those days, the movie projector broke down, so they were stuck in their little hotel room. And she said, I've been wanting to write a book. I'm going to start right now. And the book that she wrote, The Woman Warrior, A Childhood Among Ghosts, becomes famous and launches her career. And she then continues today to work for peace and other causes of social justice. So you can see the tremendous variety that there is among women warriors. Some people doing large and great things, other people working and doing things that are not so showy perhaps or well known, but that are still of value. And as I was putting together that list, thinking, what is it that unites all of these people? What is the theme that really you can find running through it all? And I had to conclude that it was love. Love for the land, love for your culture, love for those who are disabled, love for those who are enslaved. Love really is, I believe, the most. In 1969, I helped to capture a woman warrior who is known to American intelligence as the Vietnamese Annie Oakley. By the way, Annie Oakley is another hero from the 1800s and even into the 1900s. Probably the best shot in the world during that time. An incredible athlete, too. The things she could do, for example, standing up, riding on a horse, and shooting coins out of the air. Just one of the many things she could do. She was a star of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. At any rate, this Vietnamese woman had been named the Vietnamese Annie Oakley by American intelligence, and information came to me and the ex-Viet Cong unit that I was the advisor to of where this woman was going to be at midnight on a Vietnamese Buddhist holiday called the Night of Wandering Souls. And what I saw her do that night to try to avoid capture, answering calls for her to come out of her bunker and change sides the way the other Vietnamese who were on this operation had done already. You don't have to be a prisoner. Come out and change sides. Her response to that was to throw a grenade out of the hole that she was hiding in, and then rush out the secret exit to that hole, crash through a bamboo grove, fight her way all the way to a riverbank, jump over the bank into the river, swim with bullets hitting all around her and more calls, stop, change sides, you don't have to be a prisoner. She obviously would rather die than changing sides or being a prisoner. She makes it to the other side of the river. Now the bullets are hitting all around her flying feet, and she pitches forward into the darkness and disappears. One of our guys who had crossed the bridge over this river was able to shoot an M79 grenade, which wounded her, knocked her unconscious, and she was captured. But what I saw her do so blew my mind about this force that she had in order to not give in, carried through then through the almost unbelievable horror of what she went through next as a captive, going to higher and higher levels of interrogation because she would not talk. She would not give up even one person who had supported her or one bit of information. It was just amazing to see. Most men, frankly, usually talked right away. They didn't want to get tortured. She did not, and so that meant it just kept getting worse and worse for her. In 1995, I went back to look for her, and a documentary filmmaker accompanied me, and so he was able to capture our meetings, conversations, and the book tells all of that story. But again, it's that remarkable person, that person that really rises above, say, all the other amazing people you meet in life. I'm just curious about who is it for you, and what kind of inspiration does that leave? For me, it was with me, is with me, all through life. What she was able to do just changed what I thought human beings were capable of, and about the war. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Steve. Amazing story. Can you talk a little bit more about when you went back in 1995 and interviewed her?
It really all began at our old campus in Kalikikua when I was teaching a class in history of the Vietnam War. And I taught the class mostly in terms of stories of people that I thought their stories showed different aspects of the war. And the day that I told her story, I mentioned that I wanted to write a book about her. And so when I went out of class at the end, waiting for me there was one of the students. His name is Jerry Mickey. He's a former colonel in the Air Force, was a helicopter rescue pilot in Vietnam. We had become friends. And he's waiting there for me, pretty much like blocking my way to my car. And he says, "So when are you going back to Vietnam?" And I said, "Jerry, I don't want to go back to Vietnam." And he said, "Well, you have to go back to Vietnam. If you're going to write a book about her, you've got to get her side of the story too." And he said, "You know, they don't live as long as we do. You got to go right away." And so I tried something else. So I said, "You know what, Jared, I just can't afford a trip to Vietnam." And he said, "Well, what can it cost? $2,000? I'll loan you the money. I'll write you a check right now." As I drove home, I lived in Kohala then, as I drove home that night, and especially after I got above Kauai High and looked out the window to the west toward Vietnam, I knew I was going back. And so not long after that, I did. At the end of that semester, went back to look for her and found her, and was able not only to get her story, but to tell her some things that I've been keeping for a long time. So the book really has two major parts, I would say. One has to do with her capture, her interrogations, and then the next part has to do with going back to look for her 26 years later. Any other questions?
Well,
Yes.
so how did you find her eventually?
You know, Vietnam in 1995 was really just starting to open up, and so you didn't do anything like that in Vietnam without the cooperation of the Vietnamese government, and especially the Vietnamese police. And so I had a letter written in Vietnamese explaining what I was doing there and who it was I wanted to find. And so as I arrived in the nearest large city close to where she had lived, my letter went to the police. And the next day, a policeman came to talk to me about it, and they decided that they would support me in this search for her. And so I had what's called a minder, was this policeman, and he then was the interpreter. They also required him, all our conversations had to go through him. He had to be present all the time. I could not look for her on my own. And because he was the police, he was able to locate where she lived. And so we went to her house and met her there.
I've read how many American veterans have gone back and how they've been received warmly and openly, and how was your reception?
You know how it struck me was like, I don't know if this happened to you in high school, but you get in a fight with someone, say, and they suddenly become your best friend. And that's the way it struck me, that in fact I was there when the U.S. This was in the presidency of President Clinton, announced the normalization of relations with Vietnam. And everyone was happy about this. All the people that had been on the other side, they were ready to make up and be friends. And so meeting people that had been on the other side, it was usually hugs and tears was a lot of what it was about. It was truly remarkable to think of the kind of forgiving nature they had for the terrible beating that we gave that country. It was striking.
So how old is she today?
She must be right now 85. And the last letter that I wrote to her, it's been a few years ago now, came back, moved, address unknown. So I don't know if she's still alive. We did exchange letters after that visit, and her letter is in the book. But I don't know if she's still alive. She did have 4 young daughters, so I'm sure that they are, and I hope that they will be able to read the story of their mother. You know, when we were at her house, 2 visits to her house, and when she told her side of the story, so I learned a lot more than I knew when I'd been in Vietnam. She also said at one point, my children have not heard this story. So they were gathered around the table as we talked, as you can imagine, with the most intense attention to what she was saying.
Did you change your political views after interviewing her?
I think I had changed already considerably, and in fact, even that night of Wandering Souls, I had begun to change already because of what I saw her do. And that's what I meant when I said a few moments ago that what I saw her do and then what I know that she endured afterwards changed my mind about 2 things. What humans were capable of and about the war, and about war in general. Just to give you an example of that, about what humans are capable of, I was in the Foreign Service, and one of the classes in the basic course of the Foreign Service in Arlington, Virginia, has to do with interrogation. What kind of interrogation can you expect if, say, you fall into the hands of the Chinese Communists or was then the Soviet Union? And when we learned about what kind of techniques were used in interrogation in these days, I think all of us in the class that were entering the Foreign Service probably thought like I did. I don't think I could withstand that. For one thing, a lot of it is so psychological that it has the power to bend your mind, even if your will is strong. And yet in her case, she resisted everything that was done to her. And at her home, she told things that I did not know, because as she kept getting sent to higher and higher levels of interrogation, I lost the ability to visit her. And so this was all new to me too. And I just continued to marvel at her as far as what her dedication to her cause and to the people that supported her gave her the strength to do. It was superhuman, is the way it struck me.